Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we're checking out the blasphemous story of XTC and Dear God, New British Canon.
XTC burst out of late 70s Britain with hooks for days, while many of the punk bands around them proudly ignored anything before 1976. They took notes from the Beatles, Kinks and Beach Boys, and reformed them into pugnacious, state-of-the-art pop. Making plans for Nigel, Generals and Majors, and Censors Working Overtime made their unique stamp on the UK charts. But when XTC stopped playing live in 1982, their career took a much more interesting turn. Unable to sell their Englishness to the British, instead via calamitous recording sessions with Todd Rundgren and a dismissed B-side, XTC landed a punch squarely below the Bible Belt. This is New British Canon, and this is the story of Dear God.
Okay. I have only heard of XTC through other Trash Theory videos, The History of Punk, something like that. Or maybe it was Husker Du, but XTC was mentioned. I don't remember anything about them. At first, when I clicked on this video, I thought they were the band that did... I thought they were the band that did that song that goes... Now I realize I think that was a band called T-Rex. But this is XTC. I don't know what I'm about to hear. I've never heard Dear God. I'm intrigued by the Bible Belt statement. Subversion. Irreverence. No. Irreverence. Yes. Let's learn about XTC. This is Pop, the early years of XTC. 1972 to 78. The Monkees, Helium Kids, and Barry Andrews' song This is Pop, XTC.
Andy Partridge grew up in Swindon, 80 miles to the west of London, industrially important but culturally isolated.
Tilda
Enduring
Swindon.
a difficult childhood, he occupied himself with various solo creative endeavours, but his musical salvation came in the form of an American prefab pop group. The Monkees helped launch me into this insane career. They caught me at just the right time. I watched the TV show every week. I thought, this is what groups do. They all live in the same house, go on wacky adventures, and girls fling themselves at them. This is the job for me. It was like career guidance.
Okay. The Monkees. This is the first time that I've heard someone say that the Monkees were an inspiration to them. Nothing against the Monkees, but they're a TV show group, right? Prefab. This was reminding me of this person I worked with. Long story short, this band, we were in a parking lot. There was a tour bus. The band was getting on the tour bus. The person I worked with saw that this band had a little poster of the Monkees in their tour bus through the door, and she said, "Oh, the Monkees, they were a precursor to the Beatles." What? Lady. And in that one moment, I lost so much respect for her. And in hindsight, I can see that little moment festered into this huge wound of me not respecting her knowledge. And I haven't spoken to her in a long time. Anyway, I can kind of get, like, if you're a little kid, you're watching the Monkees, I could see how that would persuade you. Yeah.
This is the job for me.
For
it was
everybody.
Like career guidance. His musical loves would soon extend beyond bubblegum to early psychedelia.
Going to strawberry fields, the Everly Play. My white bicycle.
By the time he
I've never heard that. I'm sorry. Tomorrow? My white bicycle? Hang on. I'm digressing. Show me tomorrow. Tomorrow. What's their best song? No. The band Tomorrow. Oh, artist Tomorrow. Is this current? No. Apple iTunes let me down. Let's hear it again.
By the time he formed Helium Kids in 1973, he'd absorbed everything from jazz fusion to proto-punk, being especially taken with the New York Dolls. Helium Kids would later...
What's his name just passed away, and so I feel obligated to look up his name. I forgot his name. I can't believe it. He went under the name Buster Poindexter for a while, but that was not his real name. His name was David Johansen. He just passed away. Farewell, David. Thank you for your time. No, don't fast forward to the end. Oh, look, we get to hear what was it called? White Bicycle again. Thank you, David Johansen. He heard me.
By the time he formed Helium Kids in 1973, he'd absorbed everything from jazz fusion to proto-punk, being especially taken with the New York Dolls.
73.
Helium Kids would later rebrand themselves as XTC, amongst the first rumblings of British punk, a form that Partridge was unimpressed by. This was 77. I walked into this HMV and waited 10 minutes or so, and in rotation, Anarchy in the UK came on, and I thought, is that it? Is that what all the fuss is about? It just sounds like a slower version of the Ramones, or the Monkees with a bit more fuzz. I don't know, it just wasn't new enough, you know?
Wow. My perception of the Sex Pistols is totally changing since I started watching these videos. I never did much in-depth look into the history of punk. In one of these videos, I learned that the Sex Pistols were put together by a manager to be this punk band. And they're most people's first little toe dip into the world of punk. And in all these music history documentaries, it's like the Sex Pistols created punk, basically. You know, it's like they're the poster boys for punk. That's what I'm trying to say. But there's so much other punk. Anyway, that was a digression. Sorry about that. Jesus. So he heard Anarchy in the UK. He probably heard all the stories beforehand, before he ever heard the song. He heard it was banned. But then he's like, what's the big deal? That's how I feel about it when I hear it, you know? Like, is it that bad? Come on.
With a bit more fuzz. I don't know. It just wasn't new enough, you know? That this, in his approximation, rather average music, was being lauded, motivated him forward in his songwriting. The band now consisted of himself on guitar and vocals, Colin Moulding on bass and vocals, Terry Chambers on drums, and Barry Andrews on keyboards. By the end of 1977, XTC had ticked off a laundry list of pivotal band events. They'd been signed to Virgin Records. They'd had their first Peel session in June.
That's a big deal.
Released their first EP in October.
Science fiction that burns my fingers.
And recorded their debut album,
Hang
White
on.
Music.
This is playful. I like that they have a keyboard player, you know? So far, a lot of these punk bands were a trio, like guitar, bass, drums, or maybe two guitars, bass, and drums. Not many of them had a keyboard player. At least, I mean, I think later, when we get into the 80s, of course, that became a bigger thing with new wave and stuff. But at this point, that was unique. I want to hear this again. Science friction?
October.
Science fiction that burns my fingers.
And recorded their debut album, White Music.
All the kids are complaining that there's nowhere to go.
Early singles were
That's
written by
tight.
Partridge, chunks of his oddball personality reconstructed into forceful, if wonky, pop nuggets. The hiccuping rush of science friction lead track from the 3D EP, not only touches on his childhood astrophobia,
I look out my window at night. I see the stars and the bells with pride.
but also the comic book worlds he would escape into.
I bring my comics from front to back. I've been ready for any attack.
The whooping scar-flecked Statue of Liberty is a more traditional love song,
You've been the subject of so many dreams since I climbed your torso.
but makes the mostly flattering comparison between his girlfriend and a very special woman who is 100 years old and weighs over 200 tons.
This enormous woman will devour us all. Ah!
I meant the statue.
My statue of liberty.
The BBC would ban the song due to the line,
And in my fantasy I'll sail beneath your skirt.
though they were compared to other bands of the time.
Elvis Costello. I was thinking that.
And they're very cool for cats, they're cool for cats.
Squeeze.
Think of a number. Don't get swept under. A number's a number.
Partridge's knack for reassembling
Interesting. Yeah, I was hearing Elvis Costello and a band called Television, but these recordings, they sound really good. They're very tight. Their sense of time is very exact. They're a tight band. And something about his performance, the way he does it, reminds me of Billy Joel from Green Day. There's a performance they did on Conan O'Brien of Welcome to Paradise. Wait, maybe it was David Letterman. No, it was Conan. I can at least show you his mannerisms. These very tight jerks. I'm not saying Green Day got it from them, but I'm saying I see a similar energy.
Partridge's knack for reassembling his varied reference points was what made XTC stand out. It's just music. It's taking apart what you've already got and making something different. You build up a song. You've got lots and lots of bits and pieces, influences from people in the band, and it's sort of like a construction set. So what you do is loosen all the nuts and bolts, take some of the pieces away, and you're left with an interesting skeleton. None of the singles from the first two albums made the UK charts, but the music press felt that with their unique sound, it was just a matter of time before XTC were household names. Journalists were also applying terms like herky-jerky, angular, and clever to their music, while trying their best to pigeonhole them within punk, post-punk, or new wave. Partridge was particularly rattled by this.
Why do you call that noise that you belong?
It sounds awesome.
Like the Monkees, Beatles, and Pistols before them, it was still just pop music. Single This Is Pop deals with this head on.
This is pop. Yeah. This is pop.
Pop is such a dirty word. We wanted to be a pop group right from the start. We just wanted to be popular. We wanted our faces to be known, our personalities to be known, comics to be written about us, dolls to be made after us. I wanted to make films, all very corny.
That's what pop means, alright? Just like mass appeal, popular. But it's like the opposite of artistic integrity in a way, right? But is it the opposite? I don't know. That's complicated.
Was to be made after us. I wanted to make films, all very corny. Partridge wasn't the only songwriter in XTC. Colin Moulding had 3 of his own songs and white music. But when keyboardist Barry Andrews started wanting his songs to appear on second LP, Go To, there was conflict. While Moulding's songs mostly stuck to the template Partridge had solidified, Andrews' songs didn't fit.
Wanna take it out on her. Wanna take it out on her with my weapon.
It didn't help that Partridge and Andrews were
Wow, those lyrics. Yeah. I want to take it out on her with my weapon. Yeah, that's different. They didn't like his songs.
It didn't help that Partridge and Andrews were constantly sniping at each other. Even though the sound of his toy organ had defined XTC up to this point, he was given
Toy
the
organ?
boot, and in his place, guitarist and childhood friend Dave Gregory. I thought with the band almost killed off, we're gonna have to rise from the ashes. Dave Gregory being invited in was like us saying, let's start again. We just knew him, and we knew he played his instrument very well. And we needed somebody quickly, who could competently carry a musical load, touring-wise. It was a sort of panic buy that we thought would have a guarantee to it. And I was relieved he didn't write. But it wouldn't be long before Andy Partridge realised that Barry Andrews wasn't his real competition for chart glory.
Wow, that sucks. So the keyboard player, Barry, was writing songs that the others didn't like. See, in hindsight, what they should have done from the start was all share writing credit. Even if the drummer didn't write a single note, or lyric, chord, melody, nothing, he should still get credit. If you want the band to stay together. Because then the equal amount of money goes to everyone in the band. If it doesn't happen that way, you get members of the band writing songs, people fighting for spots on the album because they want to make the money. And then the band breaks up. It happened to the Beatles. It happens to every band that does it that way. One band I know of who doesn't do it that way is Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I think also REM. Pretty sure. All 4 members get equal writing credit on every song. That way, they've all got the money, and they can keep it going. Nobody's sore about it. It seems like I can understand if I wrote all the songs, and I had these 3 other people getting credit for it. It'd be like, there might be some resentment in that. But just think of the guy who doesn't write any songs, and he's playing on the album, but he can't get a song on the album, so he makes crap money. He's paid like a hired musician. Just think how he feels, right? Yeah. So they kicked the keyboard player out. They hired a guitar player, but that wasn't the end of the problems, apparently. Let's see what happened. Making plans for Nigel. The rise of Colin Moulding. April to December 1979. Colin Moulding. Ka plain pour moi. Moi? Ka plain pour moi. And British Steel song, Making Plans for Nigel, XTC. So Colin was the bass player, right?
In April 1979, XTC released their first single written by Colin Moulding, the nostalgic rock and roll bop, Life Begins at the Hop. It was also their first single to make its way into the UK Top 60, their number 54 placing being congratulated with an appearance on Top of the Pops.
Hey!
Though it was
He's also singing lead vocals. And now the lead singer guy is in the back. I forgot his name. Partridge.
would soon leave the charts, it made Virgin Records believe that Moulding, and not Partridge, was XTC's resident hitmaker. Less confident in his songs, Moulding's more traditional frontman visage had been hidden in Partridge's shadow. So when the band decamped to Townhouse Studios to work on their 3rd album, Drums and Wires, and he appeared with a handful of chords and the key phrase, "We're only making plans for Nigel," Virgin was excited for its hit potential. It was like what George Harrison said. John and Paul were able to get their rubbishy songs out of the way before the Beatles became famous, whereas I had to do it in the public eye. On some of my early stuff, I was aping Andy a bit too much. This was me trying to write something more me. Making Plans for Nigel has an autobiographical edge. Like in the song, the suggestible Moulding had for the longest time been moulded by his parents.
We only want one person for him.
Oh.
However, they were pushing him towards university, not a career in British Steel.
Has a future in British Steel.
Moulding instead chose rock and roll, but the character of Nigel was informed by those school days, a generation where children were supposed to be seen, but not heard.
Nigel is not outspoken, but he likes to speak and he loves to be spoken to.
Nigel sprang from my subconscious, for no reason other than the fact that I knew a few boys at school called Nigel, and they all seemed to be rather put upon. Nigel is the sort of guy who stays with his mum till his 40s
Oof.
and keeps pornographic magazines under the floorboards.
Nigel.
At Townhouse Studios, they were joined by producer Steve Lillywhite,
Hey!
the band having been impressed by his work with Ultravox,
Sounds good.
as well as Susie and the Banshees, The Scream. XTC were particularly interested in the powerful way he recorded drums, with his engineering partner, Hugh Padgham, and Making Plans for Nigel has some seriously interesting drums.
Sound good.
When I first heard the song, I just kept time on the drums, but started thinking, how could I make this more interesting? Because of the subject matter, I wanted to make the beat a bit more industrial, so instead of keeping the rhythm on the hi-hat, I played it on the floor tom, and used the hi-hat for the accents.
He's an artist.
It was the opposite to what drummers usually do, but it gave it a juddering, production line feel. The
Yeah.
echoey reverbiness of the production was Partridge's idea, inspired by glam rock poster boy David Essex's dub-drenched 1973 single, Rock On.
Rock on, rock on.
Okay.
Still, yeah.
That sounds
He
way
put
better
a further
though.
stamp of ownership on Moulding's song, with some unmistakable backing vocals.
We're only making plans for Nigel.
Literally as soon as it came up.
Hang on. Those drums sound amazing.
We're only making plans for Nigel.
Lower tom.
Literally as soon as it came up, it was like, Jesus, this is annoying. But then again, that might be a good thing. That might click with people if they find it as irritating as I do. It was just a little badoop, sung in a falsetto. We still love
I
those
like it.
high falsetto Beach Boys-y answer things. I still love it. I mean, every time I hear Sans Plan pour moi by Plastic Bertrand, I think, Jesus, why wasn't that me? Having been the de facto leader of the band up to this point, Partridge felt slightly put out by everyone clamouring over Moulding's newfound glory. The fact that Making Plans for Nigel, when it was released in September 1979, was the band's first top 20 single.
Only making plans for Nigel.
And the only song to get significant airplay stung all the more. I was incredibly jealous that everything Colin did was getting all the attention. He was the handsome sod, and I was the egghead. You could see Virgin's reasoning. He looked like a cross between Chrissy Hind and Nuria. The thing that really annoyed me was that once they had decided this was the single, they devoted about a third of the studio time for the whole album to this.
A third of the studio time was devoted to that song? Is that what he's saying? He looked like a cross between Chrissy Hind and Nureyev. That's, is he a skater? I think he's a Russian skater. Ice skater, I think. Or no, a ballet dancer. Might be a ballet dancer. Or just dancer. I don't know. But he has that haircut. Man, I can see where this is going. Poor Andy. I think I liked Andy's songs better. I liked when they had the keyboard player in there. I like his little woo-woo thing. It's not obnoxious. Damn.
In January 1980, as an early indication of Margaret Thatcher's 80s, British steelworkers went on strike. But when their union contacted Moulding to get a quote off him about their current plight, he had no insight. The Steelworkers Union were very excited by what they saw as a fraternal anthem. But once I told the official that Nigel was from the management side, it curtailed the conversation.
Nigel's whole future is as good as sealed.
Meanwhile, I put the wind up British Steel with the song's suggestion that a future in the industry wasn't all that fantastic. They rounded up lots of Sheffield steelworkers called Nigel to tell the press how great their jobs were.
So there were steelworkers. The steelworkers went on strike. They didn't really listen to the song. I guess they didn't really understand that it was kind of being sarcastic about there being a future in the steel industry. That's what I'm gathering from that, right?
If young Nigel says he's happy, must be happy. He must be happy.
Interesting. Senses working overtime, the XTC and the agony, 1980 to 82, Valium, English settlement and canceled shows, songs, senses working overtime, XTC. Okay. I have a feeling this rift between Moulding and Partridge is going to escalate. It's going to fester. Something's going to happen. Are they going to be able to keep their egos in check, y'all? History tells me that they are not. But I don't know. Maybe they will. I hope they do. I have no idea. We're not even halfway through this thing. We haven't even heard the song Dear God. Dear God.
In the wake of Nigel's success, Andy Partridge wanted to get back on top of Virgin's good graces, so put all his energy into the dubby follow-up, Wait Till Your Boat Goes Down. But it sank without a trace. Yet another non-charting single. But their fourth album, Black Sea, from September 1980, would produce 3 top 40 hits, leading with the Moulding penned Generals and Majors. It was the Kinks-esque Towers of London.
Towers of London, when they had built you.
And
Sounds awesome. That sounds so good.
It was the Kinks-esque Towers of London.
Towers of London, when they had built you.
And comic book fantasy, Sergeant Rock is Going to Help Me.
I could only be tough like him, then I could win my own.
That finally got Partridge's peculiar slant onto the charts, the latter surpassing Nigel by a single place.
Sergeant Rock is going to help me make the girl right.
In between albums, XTC had been touring the world non-stop. A confident, energetic live presence, they had managed to secure high-profile support slots with Talking Heads, The Cars, and The Police.
Nice.
Sting's crew being distinctly smitten by the Swindon mob, but being away from home, living out of suitcases, and spending most of their time in a cramped van was crushing their spirit. And it wasn't just the usual exhaustion. Partridge was suffering through Valium withdrawal. He'd been taking the drug multiple times a day since he was 12, prescribed for his hyperactivity, now known as ADHD. In an ill-advised move to help him quit, Partridge's wife had flushed all his medication down the toilet. When I calmed down, I thought, no, she's probably right. I don't need those things. They don't do anything for me. What do? Nothing. I don't need them. I'm going to be fine. It's going to be great.
Oh my God. I don't know if you can just quit those, right? Aren't there withdrawal symptoms? And since he was 12 years old? 3 times a day since he was 12. Okay. Wow.
The lead single from their 5th album, 1982's double LP, English Settlement, would portend what was going on inside Partridge's head.
Okay, hang on. What are the withdrawal symptoms of Valium? Valium withdrawal. Headaches, nausea, vomiting, stomach pains, cramps, and even tremors. These tremors will occur in the hands. Cardiovascular symptoms that could be associated with rebound anxiety or just be a part of the general withdrawal process. Confusion, potential to develop seizures, cravings, mood swings, depression, panic attacks, and rebound anxiety. Oh, general withdrawal. Lightheadedness, mild headache, mild fever, nausea, potential chills, depression, bouts of anxiety. Okay. That sounds horrible.
English Settlement would portend what was going on inside Partridge's head. In an attempt to write something brashly commercial and catchy, he formulated the chorus around an inverse of Manfred Mann's theme from Ready Steady Go, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Senses working overtime.
Counting to 5 resulted in a song about the 5 senses, which for Partridge was shorting out due to abrupt overexposure. The twitchy chorus was offset by the pastoral stillness of the verses. A peasant hard working the fields, unaware of modern living's sensory overload.
The straw for the donkeys and the innocents can all sleep safely.
Dave Gregory heard the song's themes as a reworking of the Beatles' It's All Too Much.
Oh.
Maybe if it had the directness of a Help, Partridge's bandmates may have clocked his distress.
I need somebody help, not just anybody help.
Senses Working Overtime ended up being XTC's highest charting single in the UK, peaking
Wow.
at number 10. But they would not be able to properly monopolise on its success. Though Partridge protested to Virgin that he wasn't well enough to tour, XTC was sent out on the road again. In March 1982, 10 shows into their European tour, Partridge collapsed on stage after playing opener Respectable Street. The blackout was deemed to be the result of not eating for 3 days,
Oh my god.
presumably triggered by withdrawal. But less than a month later, XTC marched on, starting their first significant US headline tour. They played one uneasy show in San Diego. The next night, a sold-out show at the Hollywood Palladium, Partridge suffered a nervous breakdown and was physically unable to take the stage.
Yo, that venue is very close to here. I walk by it a lot. Wow, yeah, some of those withdrawal symptoms were nausea, vomiting. You probably couldn't eat anything. Probably tired and just like run down and headaches. Playing a show like that's probably like running a marathon. First song, he's out. Damn. Ugh.
My body and brain said, "You're hating this experience. I'm gonna make it bad for you. When you go on stage, I'm gonna give you panic attacks, stomach cramps. I'm gonna mess it up for you. You're not enjoying this, and you haven't got the heart to tell anyone you can't carry on. So I'm gonna mess you up." Fearing repercussions from promoters for cancelling their entire US tour, they spirited Partridge back to Swindon, accruing a massive debt in the process. XTC never toured again.
Oh, wow. Damn. If the record label just listened to Partridge, they could have delayed it by 3 months, right? Let him get better, send him to the spa, get a massage, drink some water, eat some food, some saltines, some canned tuna, and then go on tour. At least they're sticking together. I thought there was going to be this huge ego rift between Partridge and Mulder. I forgot his name already. The bass player, the other songwriter. I thought they were going to have it out, but it seems like things smoothed over for the time being because Andy had a hit, right? Okay, Skylarking, Last Chance for XTC, 1982 to 86, 25 o'clock, Todd Rundgren and the Monsters, song Summer's Cauldron, XTC.
After the aborted English settlement tour, like their heroes the Beatles before them, XTC became a studio-based endeavour. However, when the Beatles dropped out to create more psychedelic, impossible to recreate live constructions, like Strawberry Fields Forever or Sgt. Pepper's, they were the biggest band in the world. XTC were a band that managed to secure a single top 10 hit, and were currently avalanched with debt. So as wondrously pop literate and expertly crafted as 1983's Mama and 1984's The Big Express were, due to a lack of promotion, they didn't sell particularly well. Love on a Farm Boy's Wages from the former explains in somewhat abstract terms the financial pinch the band were feeling, exacerbated by suing their manager for unpaid royalties.
How can we feed love on a farm boys? Wages!
In addition
Good
to
question.
this, during the Mama sessions, feeling he was no longer needed, Terry Chambers quit. A fleeting, if confusing, silver lining was the Dukes of Stratosphere, a psychedelia-focused side endeavour of Partridge's invention. The rules of the project were simple: write and record like it was 1967, 2 takes at most, and to use period equipment if possible. After 2 weeks and £5,000 investment, they ended up with 6 tracks that varyingly pastiched LSD-era Beatles, Pink Floyd, and the Electric Prunes.
Then came the dawn, and you were gone. 25 o'clock, that's when you're going to be mine.
Sounds a lot like it.
The most fun we ever had in the studio was recording the Dukes records. There was no pressure. It was just one big fancy dress ball for the head. Anything went, any sound, any idea, as long as it felt like it could have been historically correct for 1967. There was zero pressure. We never knew if it would sell, and the Dukes had nothing to live up to.
Okay. This is a strange choice. This is a strange direction to go. So after they stopped touring, they made 2 more records, 2 more XTC records. They didn't sell well because they weren't touring. Back then, the live shows were like an advertisement for the records. Now the records are an advertisement for the live shows. So if they weren't touring, they weren't getting the promotions, didn't sell well. The drummer quit because he felt useless. See, he probably had to get a job. But instead of making another XTC record, they made this Dukes record. It sounds like it was a lot of fun. I like the idea of putting those limitations on yourself. I think that's smart. I think especially if you've already made several records already, you need a little creative thing to hang your hat on, right? Some limitations. So Terry quit, the drummer quit. A fleeting, if confusing silver lining was the Dukes of Stratosphere. The rules were write and record it like it was 1967, 2 takes at most. That's not many takes. Even the Beatles would do like 80 to 100 takes sometimes, right? And use period equipment if possible. It took 2 weeks and 5,000 pounds, and they ended up with 6 songs. One of them was 25 o'clock. Let's listen to it again.
If you were gone, 25 o'clock, that's when you're going to be mine.
It really sounds like 1967. Amazing.
To live up to.
I'm the moon from the ministry.
Wow.
Virgin released the songs as the 25 o'clock 12-inch on April Fool's Day 1985, marketed as an unearthed classic, and it quickly sold double what the last XTC album had.
What? That's brilliant. So the record label branded this as a lost masterpiece that was actually recorded in 67. And it sold twice as many as the last XTC album had. Good for them. Wow.
However, the project's teacup Englishness and kaleidoscopic miasma would spill over into XTC's next album, 1986's Skylarking. With sales being very bad in the UK and still not making a dent in the US, their label felt that XTC's overall sound was alienatingly English. So if they wanted to remain on the label, they would have to team up with a US producer with a proven track record of delivering hit albums. Todd Rundgren was the only one that Partridge recognized. Dave Gregory was a fan and convinced Partridge by reminding him that he'd produced the first and best New York Dolls LP.
Whoa. So the record label was like, this is too English. If you don't want us to drop you, you got to use an American producer. Todd Rundgren's a good one to use if you're going to use one. Yeah, that's great. Ashley saw him perform with Ringo Starr at the House of Blues in Orlando, Florida.
Rundgren too had been a fan of XTC's work. After sending him 20 demos, Rundgren pared them down and assembled them into a track listing of his own devising, based around the concept of a lifetime in a day. It starts with the womb-set comfort of Summer's Cauldron,
Please don't pull me out. This is how I would want to go.
and ended with the finality of Dying and Sacrificial Bonfire.
And I'm getting older too. Sacrificial bonfire.
In Between is a love story.
So XTC recorded a bunch of demos of songs they'd written. They sent them to Todd Rundgren, and then Todd Rundgren organized the track listing. He chose the ones that should be on the album. Wow, it's an interesting way to do it. And he came up with a concept. Wow.
In Between is a love story, flitting between infatuation, humiliation, heartbreak, and marriage, rendered in achingly serene pagan folk and the purplest art pop. The fact that this was worked out before the band had recorded a single note put Partridge at odds with Rundgren for the rest of the process.
Oh, crap.
Andy didn't like being led. Todd chose the songs. I know for a fact that, had he not, my contribution in number would have been decidedly less. I was just grateful that the band had an independent arbiter. Now I know how George Harrison felt.
Oh, man. Andy didn't like being led. Wow. So it sounds like Andy kind of retook control of the whole thing away from Colin after he had those. Did he get a top 40 single? Is that what? I kind of forgot. I gotta go back and look. But Todd must have chosen some of Colin Moulding's songs that probably would not have been chosen if Andy was just left to do what he wanted. Interesting. Now I know how George Harrison felt. Wow.
Moulding would end up with 5 songs on Skylarking, more than any album before or after. Prior to the Skylarking sessions, Partridge had been in charge, the undisputed chief maker of creative decisions, with producers like John Leckie and Steve Lillywhite rarely interfering with the songcraft. But Rundgren was there because Partridge's prior methods had not worked commercially,
Right.
to dissuade him from some of his worst impulses from their last couple of records.
For XTC, what would happen is like all of the air would go out of the mixes because Andy would find some little space he wanted to fill it in, you know, so he would like make something brighter or louder or whatever, so that it was kind of like it was losing its dynamics. It's just like a thing that comes at you.
As the two big personalities collided, Rundgren took control, openly ridiculing Partridge for his lyrics, singing, and even his trousers. Only one person there had recorded the multi-million selling Bat Out of Hell, and it wasn't Andy.
Wow, I wouldn't have taken Todd Rundgren to be that kind of guy. He seems pretty laid back, but I guess I mean, he was probably in communication with the record label, and he knew that they wanted him to steer Andy away from those English sounds, musical devices. Y'all, so Todd Rundgren recorded Bat Out of Hell. I gotta tell you, when I worked at a recording studio in New York City called Right Track, they were doing the 5-point mixes of Bat Out of Hell, 5.1 mixes of Bat Out of Hell, and the tapes were so old, they needed to be baked so that they wouldn't fall apart when you put them on the tape machine. And I was tasked with baking them. So I had these big 2-inch reels, I had to put them in the convection oven in the kitchen of the recording studio and babysit them. You have to bake them for 4 hours, and then you let them cool for 4 hours. So I had to time everything. I had to keep track of all the reels and make sure it was a big deal. And then we would play the tape on the tape machine one time just to get it to transfer to digital. And then they did the 5.1 mixes from the digital. I'm so thankful that I didn't f it up. I could have easily ruined that album for all eternity. There would never be more, not like you could get back to it. But thank God. Anyway, yeah, Andy didn't record Bat Out of Hell.
Person there had recorded
He didn't bake the tapes either.
the multi-million selling Bat Out of Hell, and it wasn't Andy. Todd's way of working was to be dominant in all matters. As long as you lay down on your back while he puts his foot on your stomach, you'll get along just fine. If you had the temerity to argue with him, he'd just go home and tell you to dick around with it on your own until it doesn't work your way, and then I'll come back and we'll do it my way.
I think Todd is being kind but not nice, you know? He's doing what Andy needs him to do, but he's not being nice about it. And that's, that's okay. It's effective sometimes, right? I'm surprised, though. I thought Todd was laid back.
Partridge would get his own back in ineffectual ways, leading the band to play through the Munsters theme tune as Rundgren entered the studio.
Damn.
Rundgren, unaware of his own supposed physical
He does kind of look like him. He does kind of look like him. Oh God.
Rundgren, unaware of his own supposed physical likeness to the looming, monstrous Herman Munster, feeling powerless to create his art the way he wanted, Partridge directed his impotent rage towards his longtime ally, berating Moulding's bass line on Earn Enough for Us.
I can take humiliation and hurtful comments.
The resultant fight was
Sounds good to me. It's like a tasteful bass line. Andy, come on.
Humiliation and
The resultant fight was the only really vocal disagreement the two had ever had in the history of the band. Mostly their grievances were aired under their breath, but this motivated Moulding to make an exit. I did a Ringo. Andy was not enjoying being dictated to, and I think he was taking it out on me a little. I was a little hyped and we were all homesick. At the time I said, I'm out, but this band is my life. Why would I want to leave it? I left and came back and it was never mentioned again.
Ringo did that too, that's funny.
Why would I want to leave it? I left and came back and it was never mentioned again. Despite everything, Skylarking is filled with moments of wonder. The lusty springtime fumbling of grass.
The way you slap my face just fills me with desire.
Dave Gregory's nimble solo
Desire.
on That's Really Super, Supergirl. The cinematic orchestration that flows through 1,000 umbrellas.
How can you smile and forecast weather's getting better and you soon forget her if you...
And the fading memories of dying.
What sticks in my mind is the dewdrop hanging off your nose.
But that didn't mean it was an instant hit.
Oh, wow. I thought they were going to say, and this went to the top of the charts and da-da-da. But it was not an instant hit, apparently. Dear God, Fist Fighting a Deity, 1986 to 87. God, Rocky Raccoon, a Beatles song, and Controversy song, Dear God, XTC. Oh, we're going to hear the song for the first time, y'all. Or I am. You've probably heard it. Sounds like Rocky Raccoon.
Skylarking was released in October 1986, confirming Partridge's suspicions about Rundgren's interference. It flopped pretty hard. It would peak at number 90 on the UK album chart, before dropping out completely the next week. The first single, the Moulding composition Grass, also failed commercially. Meekly climbing to number 100 on the UK singles chart for 2 non-consecutive weeks. Things were not looking good for XTC in the UK.
That's not horrible. I mean, it charted, right?
But over in the US, curious college radio DJs had imported Grass 7 inches and taken notice of the B-side.
Here it comes.
Dear God, sorry to disturb you, but I feel
If Skylarking was Partridge wrestling with the big chewy themes of life with his post-Valium clarity, Dear God was Partridge verbally fist-fighting with a deity that he didn't believe was there.
I can't believe in you.
Like many an Englishman raised by the church, Partridge had beef with Jehovah.
You make mankind
But unlike most, he claims to have seen the face of God.
after we made you.
Oh.
I'd struggled with the concept of God and man and so on since I was a kid, even to the point where I got myself so worked up with worry about religion that, around the age of 7 or 8 on a summer's day, I saw the clouds part, and there was this sort of classic Renaissance picture of God, surrounded by his angels, looking at me scornfully.
Does Valium make you hallucinate? This says 7 or 8. Scornfully. I would be terrified if I saw that. I would probably have become a monk. My God. Literally.
Sorry to disturb you, but I feel that I should be loud and clear.
The title was taken from a series of books that were popular at the time, filled with children's letters to God. Partridge found the concept tacky, but the title and the idea of an atheist writing to the creator, questioning his presence, intrigued him.
All the people that you made in your image, still are fighting in the street.
For the song's countrified twang, Partridge again returned to a memory from his youth, him being goaded into continually playing a song by his own personal deities, the Beatles.
Oh, that song. Well, somewhere in the Black Mountain Hills of Dakota, there lived a young boy named Rocky Raccoon.
Because I was the youngest, they'd physically lift me onto the desk, give me my guitar and say, "Play Rocky Raccoon, or you're not getting down." I'd play it over and over until the teacher came back.
And Rocky collapsed in the corner.
Feeling it complemented the concept, Rundgren suggested that the first verse be sung by a child, and arranged for a friend's 8-year-old daughter, Jasmine Vayette, to come into the studio to record.
Hang on, I just want to back up. Because he was the youngest, they'd physically lift me onto the desk, give me the guitar, and say, play Rocky Raccoon or you're not getting down. I'd play it over and over till the teacher came back. This was in school? Who was this teacher that's just leaving kids alone to bully each other? What a horrible teacher. Is she teaching 2 classes? Is she doing cocaine in the bathroom? Get it together, teacher.
And arranged for a friend's 8-year-old daughter, Jasmine Vayette, to come into the studio to record. XTC were barred from the session, so she would be more comfortable singing Partridge's lyrics about skepticism, starvation, and the price of beer.
I don't mean a big reduction in the price of beer.
Because of the music video,
she has a good voice. I like her voice.
Skepticism, starvation, and the price of beer.
I don't mean a big reduction in the price of beer.
Because of the music video, many believe that a boy was singing, but no.
See them starving on their feet, 'cause they don't get enough to eat.
When it came to the final master of Skylarking, Virgin disliked the kids singing, and felt that this antagonistic song about the Almighty might offend Middle America. But mostly, Partridge felt he hadn't done the subject justice.
I won't believe in heaven, hell, no saints, no sinners, no devils as well.
It wasn't chewy enough. I only had 3 minutes to take on such a big subject. Don't get me started talking about religion.
The pearly gates, no thorny crown. You're always letting us humans down.
It plays on basic spinal column superstitions and fears, saying there's an aging English actor up here in a sheet, and he's going to zap you with his rod if you don't put something in the collection plate and behave yourself.
The Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. It's just songs of the Holy Host.
God is man-made. We invented this to keep other members of mankind, and especially womankind, under control.
And if you're not there, you perceive that my heart's here upon the sea.
It's a protectionist racket. Humans can't live without magic. Gods, pop stars, clowns, UFOs.
There's one thing I don't believe in.
So when US college radio DJs started playing the B-side to Grass, XTC's US label, Geffen, was inundated with calls asking about this song that they knew nothing about. Such was the demand that Geffen immediately reissued the album with Mermaid Smiled, replaced by Dear God. But controversy hung over the song. In a move to get the song pulled from playlists, a Florida radio station got a bomb threat. Conversely, a New York State teenager held his school secretary at knife point, forcing her to play the song on repeat over the school's PA.
What?
So strongly had he connected with the song's message. Mail started to arrive, and it was 50%, this is fantastic, you voiced what I've been thinking for years, and 50%, you're gonna roast in hell. It really pissed off some people, but I'm glad it did. As a song though, I still think it's a petulant failure.
Those lyrics I heard were pretty brilliant. They capture that atheist thought. They rhyme really well. Good rhymes. He's spitting bars, y'all.
Dear God made Skylarking their biggest album in the US to date, peaking at number 70 on the Billboard chart.
Okay.
Rundgren may have caused tension in the band, but he achieved exactly what the label wanted. 6 months after the LP's reissue, he had outsold the rest of the XTC catalogue 3 times over.
Wow. Wow. Oh my gosh, what a roller coaster. Jeez. And Rice. You bring the summer, enduring legacy. 1988, modern rock, modern life is rubbish, and the Monkees. Song Mayor of Simpleton, XTC.
In the US, XTC would go on to greater success in the years that followed. College rock and alternative becoming such an undeniable sector of American rock radio that the modern rock chart became a thing in 1988, benefited XTC greatly. Their 2 follow-up albums, Oranges and Lemons in 1989 and None Such in 1992, would both birth a modern rock #1.
Really? Never heard of that.
But not owning any of their own recordings, and wanting to be finally free of Virgin, XTC went on strike, and didn't release any more music until they were freed from their contract. By the recording of 1999's Apple Venus Volume 1, Dave Gregory had had enough. It was getting very difficult to work with Dave, because there was no to everything. I had to say to him at one point, "Can you take a break? Because I want to do some vocals, and I can't do them with you just shaking your head all the time." That day he packed up all his gear and left the studio.
Whoa.
Colin Moulding stuck it out for a while longer, submitting his regulation-free songs to 2000's Wasp Star, finally leaving Partridge to his own devices in 2006. The same year, a recording studio accident meant that a large amount of Partridge's hearing was destroyed, the ensuing tinnitus leaving him at the time suicidal. Still, he remains one of the great British...
What happened? What happened? A recording studio accident. What do you mean? We had an engineer who was kind of clumsy. He was a nice enough fellow, but he was kind of clumsy, and he recorded a lot of earth buzz and stuff on some drum tracks, which we were all upset about because it's stuff you can't do again. It's a one take and that's it. Right? And we electronically cleaned up the buzz, and I was just checking to see whether he'd done a good job, and I was listening to a piece of silence on the recording on headphones with the mixing desk at full volume to make sure that the buzz had gone. And he was messing with the computer when he shouldn't have been, and he hit a wrong button, and he sent the sound of the snare drum at full volume into my ears. I mean, the top of the mixing desk at full, really as loud as you can go. My first thought was, after I kind of regained my senses, having visually blacked out, but my first thought was, Christ, my headphones are so expensive that I had to have effed them up. And then I noticed I could hear this whistle sound constantly in both my ears. It's like a diving bell. Wow. Yeah. I don't like that he blames the engineer for that. Like, I don't think most studios could get loud enough to really damage your hearing like that, but maybe they could. But, you know, that was probably just the final straw in his ears, you know? He'd been playing forever, probably blasting music forever.
The same year, a recording studio accident meant that a large amount of Partridge's hearing was destroyed, the ensuing tinnitus leaving him at the time suicidal. Still, he remains one of the great British songwriters, even if Britain at large didn't care for his eccentric, oh-so-English musings. I have a problem with that tag, to be honest. To me, eccentric means damaged, and thankfully I'm not Sid Barrett, and I'm definitely not Michael Jackson. If the songs mythologize Swindon, then that's fine, but I don't. I'm governed by my phobias and fears. And when you're like that, you're comforted by what you know.
Andy seems complicated. I don't think of eccentric as damaged. I would take that as a compliment if someone called me eccentric.
Influence-wise, XTC is surprisingly prevalent. Blur's first choice of producer for the Britpop urtext, Modern Life is Rubbish, was Andy Partridge. Though none of his work made the final album due to creative differences. XTC can still be heard in Blur's spiky character studies, with provoking backing vocals.
Looks at his watch, he's on time.
Also on the producer front, the Stone Roses teamed up with John Leckie on their epochal debut, thanks to his work with the Dukes of Stratosphere, while the new Enemy Revolution bands would also try to replicate their post-punk period.
I reacted to them. I think that's the first video I reacted to on this channel. It was Franz Ferdinand. I thought they were German, but they're Scottish, y'all. Yeah, that sounds like them.
Their 80s power pop work would inspire those on the other side of the pond.
Oh yeah. Yo, that Jellyfish album is really good. I like Jellyfish. I forgot about it until now.
Recently, Porcupine Tree's Stephen Wilson, remixing the albums, has opened up the band
Porcupine
to the
Tree.
proggier side of obscure music enjoyers. XTC being reassessed alongside ELO, Peter Gabriel and Kate Bush as purveyors of prog pop. But at large they are missing their running up that hill moment. An undeniable pop culture needle drop that would reintroduce the band to a new generation of fans. His face might not be known to the public at large. He never got comics written about him, or dolls in his image. And due to his issues playing live, he didn't have anywhere near the amount of wacky adventures he dreamt of as a kid. But Andy Partridge did briefly become part of the Monkees. In 2016, he crafted a couple of power pop confections for their revival album, Good Times.
Love's what I want for us all. When you come around, you bring the summer.
Andy Partridge still remains in his hometown of Swindon, constructing pop marvels from his garden shed studio, whether there's an audience or not. When Classic Rock magazine asked him what he was most proud of, he replied with characteristic bravado, writing songs as good as the Beatles, Kinks, Beach Boys, or any of the people I idolized as a youngster. I know people are going to be guffawing and clutching their sides, but despite coming from a poxy council estate in Swindon, I've written, and my bunch of lads have made, music as good as our heroes.
Okay. Wow.
Thanks for watching. Do you
Thank
think
you.
XTC are still underrated? Comment down below.
I do. Y'all be sure to go to Trash Theory and like and subscribe. It sounds like he's in a good spot if he really believes that stuff. That's a hard thing to realize. He seems like the kind of guy who would never be satisfied, but it sounds like he's satisfied. That's good. Yeah, they are like prog pop, but they never had that huge hit in America anyway. That song Dear God is pretty intense. I could see how that would piss off a lot of dumb people. Let's check them out on Apple Music. What albums they got on Apple Music? Show me on Apple Music. Dear God's their top song. Making Plans for Nigel's their second biggest song. Since Working Overtime, The Mayor of Simpleton, 2 essential albums. They got a lot of albums though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wow. Skylarking was their 8th album. Goodness. Essentials. Making Plans for Nigel, Dear God, Since Is Working Overtime. Although XTC got their start in the late 70s punk scene, their initial inspirations came from 60s psychedelia. Whew. Making Plans for Nigel sounds amazing. Dear God sounds amazing too. Okay, alright. Wow. I'm excited about these guys. I think they have a future. In my own brain. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna listen to them. Well, y'all, I'd like to thank my patrons. I'd like to thank my Buy Me a Coffee folks. Thank y'all for watching this with me, and I'll see you next time. Later.
Bicycle.